And now please welcome Dev Patel. Very good, thank you.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Welcome and congratulations on the film. It's really extraordinary, and it touches on so many levels. We'll touch on all of those right now, but it's based on a biography, an autobiography by Saroo Brierley called A Long Way Home, published in 2015. But even as it was in the screenplay adaptation process, you knew you wanted to be a part of this, right? Let's hear that story.
Yes, I'm very persistent. I turned up in Koreatown in Los Angeles at the doorstep of Luke Davies, who's a writer, and Garth. And, I went in there super keen, and I was like, look, I really want to be a part of this. And there was this whiteboard with all the story points on it. And they're like, look, you can't look at that. It's classified information. And so it's a very awkward meeting. And they're like, look, you're a really sweet guy, but you're going to have to jump through the hoops. And, thank God it happened. And I'm here now.
Now, what was jumping through the hoops like? Was it sort of letting them know that you could because there's a lot to Saru. There's one of the things I find fascinating about him is that he's a character who really kind of doesn't kind of know himself. He knows who he wants to be. He has sort of an aching sense of who he was prior to being adopted, and has a sense of who this new self is. But there's something inside of him that feels unfulfilled, and he's trying to figure out what that is. So when you were talking with them about who Saru sort of was, what were sort of the jumping hoops part that you had?
Yeah, well, more so, it's interesting when you build up a resume and then that kind of works against you because they're like, oh, he's obvious, he's that kid from Slumdog Millionaire, everyone's seen him, and I'm like, wait a minute, I've worked really hard to create this resume, but now it's, but in a way you just have to go in and really want it. And I Skyped with the director from my bathroom in LA because that's the best reception in the house, and then I put myself on tape, and then I was in London shooting a film with Jeremy Irons called The Man Who Knew Infinity, and they called me and said, look, he wants to meet you, like, in a couple days. And I was like, what do I do? So I got out of this headspace of this Indian mathematician, and went in to do this audition. It was 6 hours long. And it was kind of, Garth is an incredible filmmaker because he's very spiritually inclined. So it was all about exploring the space, the space that these characters live in, the tactility. And then after 5.5 hours, he's like, I want you to do one more thing if you want to, which is scream. I want you to roar. And I said, well, what do you mean roar? And he's like, I want you to completely expel any kind of emotion or history or pain that you have inside of you. And, you're sitting there like, I've just met you and now you want me to completely lose it. And he's like, I'm going to put some music on. And there's this composer called Gustavo Santaolalla. He's from he does Inarritu's films. And on the way to the audition, I was listening to this song. It's a beautiful string song called Deportation from Babel. And he said, let me put this song on. And he put this song on. It was the exact same song I was listening to in the car. And it was like this serendipity. And then, I proceeded to go and cry like a maniac and scream. And it was beautiful. And and I got the role.
That spiritual aspect, I feel like that is there so much in the film, even in subtle ways. Garth Davis also directed Top of the Lake, co-directed with Jane Campion, which is a terrific miniseries. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. But there's often scenes or moments where Saru sort of feels sort of adrift in the landscape. Like there's you're framed within a lot of space, and even at the moment that you're sort of with some friends who are from India, and you're smelling and tasting some of the Indian food that they're cooking, you're by yourself at that moment. There's a lot of sort of a sense of isolation to Saru.
Exactly. That was the process. So as soon as I got the call that I got this job, I called up my manager and I said, for the next 8 months, I don't want you to send me anything. I don't want any distractions. I don't want to have to audition for anything else. I want to commit every fiber of my being to this role. Because looking like I do, scripts like this don't come around every so often. Characters that are so deep, there's a real gravitas to the role, and he's not some goofy sidekick or, whatever, a best friend role or something. There's some real meat to the bone. And, the first thing he said was, I want you to adopt a physical space, which is more masculine than you've ever been. And then I want you to find a soulful kind of vulnerability that you've never been in either. So I'm looking at two ends of the spectrum here. And, you know, I was training every day, eating like a madman until my liver was foie gras. And then I went to India 3 weeks before we started filming. And there was a lot of it was dialect coaching too. The Aussie accent, you know, you start off sounding like Crocodile Dundee. So it takes a while. But I went to India and I traveled the trains alone. And I saw the landscape change. And it was to try and build a real memory map that I could key into as a performer, so I wasn't imitating something or drawing on nothing. You know, to create a real history between the characters is very important. So, you know, I traveled the trains, visited orphanages, wrote diaries. I had this exercise where he made me stare in front of a mirror for an hour. It was like half an hour, I forgot now. But the first 2 minutes are so excruciating. You know, you're used to like combing your hair or popping your pimple or doing something in front of the mirror. And then, you know, you get to like 20 minutes and all of a sudden you're in this sort of trance. And I couldn't recognize myself. Like everything, I was so familiar with every feature on my face. And after that, a certain amount of time, I looked like a stranger. I looked like my father, then my mother, and then someone I didn't even... And I went to set completely shaken. I was like, dude, I think I'm a complete fraud. I don't know who I am. I'm a fake. Goth, what have you done to me? And he's like, look, that's the reason I made you do this exercise, because the soul is ever changing. You know, you know that's the whole idea, is to look inside. So it's about being still and being comfortable in that still space, that stillness. And a great director can allow you to really expose yourself. And that's what the role required, in a way. So yeah, it was an introverted journey, and he's isolated. He's as a British Indian guy, you know, I could relate to someone that suppressed part of his heritage growing up to fit in, because that's what I did, you know, to try and be like the other kids, not get bullied. You know, it's like shove the Indian part aside, because that's, you know, they're gonna call me Harold and Kumar or this or that or, you know, whatever, and try and be like everyone else. And then I went to India for the first time to shoot Slumdog, and it was like that light bulb moment. And all that prejudice, and not prejudice because I wasn't prejudiced against myself, that's stupid, but that kind of stereotype or the preconceived notions I had built up in my mind were completely dispelled. You know, I was auditioning with these girls, you know, and I fell in love with my co-star. Like they listened to more modern music than I did, you know, rock and roll and all sorts of stuff. And I really understood a lot about me and my heritage, and I felt whole, and it's about identity. And that's what Saru did. He suppressed part of his history, you know, until there's this moment where he's at a house party with friends, and he opens the fridge to get a beer, and inside is these sweets called these jalebis, which are sugary Indian street snacks. And it sets off this kind of... Yeah, exactly. Sets off this memory in his head of when he was a child in the streets, and he'd always wanted to taste one of those, and his brother promised him one day we'll have enough money to buy a whole vat. And he's in Australia, you know, with his cool clothes and his jeans, looking at this thing, and he finally tastes it. And that is when Pandora's box is opened. So yeah.
It's an extraordinary moment. You mentioned going to India, and also the notion of sense memory, which is a good segue to one of the first few days of shooting. You shot with the actress who plays your mother in the film, and you guys have this amazing reunion in the film, not giving anything away, but there's an amazing reunion, and that was sort of one of the first scenes that you guys shot. I'm wondering how that affected subsequent shooting once you got to Australia and shot the scenes in the film prior to that. Was there sort of almost a sense memory of having to build up to that moment that you had already shot as you guys went and shot?
Yeah. So I went out 3 weeks early, did all that, and then the first scene I had to shoot of the entire film was the end scene, the most emotionally pregnant moment of the movie. It's bloody terrifying for an actor, because, you know, if that doesn't work, that reunification of mother and son, then the film, you know, the climax is not there. And me and Priyanka were in the middle of nowhere in India, and Indore, there's nothing to do, so every night we would hang out, have dinner, talk about life, whatever. And then Garth was like, okay, I don't want you to see each other for the next week. And I was like, why? He's like, I want you to starve yourself of each other's energy. And, the next time I saw her is how you see it in the film. The character walks around a couple pathways, and then in the distance he sees these three women, and she's in the center. And she had this incredible makeup. She's been aged, and you would kind of come together like these two, particles colliding. And we had this whole village. None of them were planted extras, so they were just reacting off our energy. No one knew what I was saying because I was speaking in a Australian, English accent. So, they just looked at the love and the truth of the scene, and all of a sudden they're reaching forward and all these hands are touching my face, and it felt like I was in Avatar or something. But it was a really profound moment where you find an honesty as a performer, which is, so nourishing. It's very hard to produce that, but again, it's to a great filmmaker.
And knowing that was the scene that you were going to build towards, and then when you got to Australia to shoot those Australian scenes, like, it must have been interesting knowing that what was coming on screen was going to be the shot that you had already filmed that had so much emotion to it and so much build to it, that playing Saru sort of starved of that. Yeah. Must have had an interesting...
Well, the landscape is really important. This is a kid who got ripped away from his family at the age of like 5 or 7. But he has such an incredible photographic memory that, many, many years later as an adult, he literally found his mother from space. Found a needle in a haystack from space. Google had just come out, and it was, a day. It wasn't as advanced as it is now. It was blurry pixels. The refresh rates were terrible, but the amount of information and history you could gather from those pixels is just incredible. And we did exercises with Priyanka and the little boy who plays me when I'm younger, where we played in the grass, in the leaves, in the forest. And Garth would record, this is Garth, our director, would record the sound of the leaves. And when I'm sitting in Australia, in freezing cold Hobart, looking at this blank screen, trying to muster so much emotion, because Saru told me, the real guy, he's like, with every click of the mouse, I felt like I was getting one step closer to my mother. I'm sitting there trying to muster these emotions, and Garth would play the sound of those leaves. I could hear India, I could hear the laughing voices of Priyanka and little Sonny, and it created a real memory for me. So I wasn't keying into something artificial, to bring it back to the last question, but that's what we were doing.
Creates a bridge. What was the most surprising thing that meeting the real Saru taught you? Because obviously there's so much in the book, and I'm sure that in speaking with him, you wanted to make sure you got this portrayal right. But what was the most surprising thing for you, Dev, about him?
Well, I felt like I'd known him because I'd been living as him for 8 months already. So you go and meet this guy, and he's like, "All right, chill out, man, easy," But I was super excited and very nervous because we've got the biggest scene in the movie in the can already. So if he doesn't like me, it's going to be crap. It's going to be terrible. But he is the epitome of a fiercely driven human being. He's a survivor. This is a kid that was left on a train track in India, and he was surrounded by so many human beings. It's such a claustrophobic space. There are so many predators out there to get you. And he just dodged so much adversity and was able to adapt, and had an amazing instincts to get through those ordeals you'll see in the film. And, we spoke about the microcosmic, things. And, it's funny when you meet someone because they want to display something to you. But as an actor, you sit there and you actually just want to see, you want to look for the dark side of the moon, what they're not showing you. So you just try and spend as much time as you can with this person. You pick up some of these little traits and how he is, the nervous twitches, the overconfidence, this, that. But Saru is a very generous man, so's his mother and his father. And we sat in his car and went to this barbecue. And I met him recently, and he remembered the song we were listening to, the clothes I was wearing, the eggs I'd ordered. And I was like, man, because when you go through such horrendous ordeals, you can suffer from a PTSD, which is what a lot of people do, when they've come back from war or if the child's been abused. But I guess maybe it's a testament to the love that his mother gave him, his biological mother, that he managed to hold those memories so purely in his heart and in his brain. That's how he could find her. Yeah.
Let's talk about the actress who plays his adoptive mother. Saroo Brierley is Nicole Kidman, and also Rooney Mara, who plays his girlfriend Lucy. In those scenes with both of them, they're both two amazing actresses. But your scenes with them strike me as they're so painful in some ways because they represent love and home and sort of the new beginning that Saru has, the life that he has there. And in order to sort of go back, it's not that he's leaving them, but he does in some ways have to turn his back on his current life to kind of check out what it is about his past that he's missing, and they represent the love and support that he has in his current life. What were the scenes like with them in discussions with the two of them about your scenes?
They were pretty amazing, actually. You know, Nicole Kidman. I mean, I'm a dude from Rayners Lane in London, which is the last stop on the tube station, like right at the end. And then all of a sudden, you're in Australia and you're about to walk into a room and do some rehearsals with Nicole Kidman. You're like, what? And she's got that energy. She walks in a room and she kind of glides. She's like over 6 foot. But then we started doing all these crazy exercises, and you look over, and she's got her sleeves rolled up, and she's just like another student submitting herself to her director. And I really respected that, And, she's acting from a real place of truth. She's a mother herself with adopted children. So, it was amazing to have a front row seat to a performance like that,
She's very much a character actress, too, in so many ways.
Completely.
She really dives into these characters.
Yeah, and Rooney is like, she reminds me of like a modern-day Audrey Hepburn. She's so beautiful. And she is like a quietly fierce, and I'm like a big goofy Labrador, So like we're like completely different energies. And Garth, the first thing he had us do was this thing called the monkey exercise. I don't know if there's any actors here or anything, but he gets you to do a scenario but without any dialogue. He takes the dialogue away from the scene. So he's like, look, she's really upset with you because you've forgotten your anniversary today. So you've got to come in the room and try and make her come around to you, be your friend. I walk in and he's like, cut, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, come in like a monkey. And I'm like, what? Like, and he's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay. And then I kind of jump in and I'm like, and there's Rooney Mara, the first time I've met her, and she's like doing a little thing. And, I'm hopping around her, picking lice out of her hair and all this kind of stuff. But what happens is, first of all, you feel like an absolute idiot, But you're both feeling like an idiot. So the ego or whatever it is gone. And then the second thing is it builds a tactility because you can't talk. So you have to touch that person's face. You have to feel her hair. You have to do certain things. And that creates a kind of chemistry that you can only get if you're in a really long relationship. So I suggest, if there's any actors there, it's an amazing technique. We also did this thing where he put us on these canvases and we drew around each other in chalk, and then we had to paint what we saw. And it was interesting because I drew her as this big blue being with a tree growing out of her tummy or something. And she drew this miserable like guy with a bleeding heart. And I was like, what? But what we subliminally did was project our characters on each other. Because Saru is not present. He's a young guy, he's charming, he's all that kind of stuff, but actually he starts to get lost in a nostalgia. Wherever he looks, he can see his brother. He's in a food court and he sees his brother in his, raggedy clothes and, coal on his face, picking through the food. And these hauntings start to come over and over again, and he starts to withdraw from his real life and from all those relationships for this search. And she's this force, this light that's trying to be like, be here now, be with me, come back. Did that make sense? I don't know, but, she's the light in the darkness.
How has acting changed for you over the last few years? Because we obviously all came upon you with Slumdog Millionaire. Though you were on British TV, Skins before that, and you've been acting since you were young. Aside from maybe acting like a monkey, how has acting changed for you over the last 10 years or so?
It's been interesting, Like I the first film I did won 8 Oscars, and I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. Which is a God's honest truth, I was 17 years old, never really been to an acting school or anything. I did this TV show that my mum saw an audition in a newspaper for, but it was interesting because it's a blessing, but at the same time you're walking these big red carpets and you feel like a bit of a fraud when you're seeing all these amazing actors. So that was the drive, was to earn my place. But the tricky thing is you get spat out of that, and then all of a sudden there's nothing. There's there's not those parts that you'd expect to come because no one's writing. There's no diverse scripts out there. So I thought, okay, either I can pack this in now, or I can try and choose wisely. Some of them won't be perfect. A lot of them won't be perfect. But what you do is you take on the mold to break the mold, and that's been my philosophy. You need to keep the lights on. You got to do certain things. So the only way you're going to shift the barometer is to sometimes go in there, and then those storytellers, those guys that generate the ideas, you make them think differently. So that's what's happened. And then you look at a film like this, and that is the perfect evolution. Nicole Kidman's the mother, Rooney Mara is the love interest. It's an anthem of love and unity and diversity and all sorts of things, with actors from India, London, Australia. It's awesome.
Before we take a couple of questions from the audience, I want to ask you, just because this film, like The Man Who Knew Infinity, the one you just mentioned, which is also a terrific film, both based on true stories, do you find yourself, either when you're reading a biography or you read something in the newspaper, now that you're an established actor, looking at projects and thinking, and even if it's not for yourself, but thinking about, this might be an amazing film, this could be a great script.
Yeah.
Do you look at
that's why I read it. I read this in a paper, this story, and that's why I ended up knocking on the door. Infinity took 10 years to get off the ground, and they couldn't put it together. It's a movie about mathematics. There's an Indian dude and an old grumpy professor, and no real crazy romance or anything. It's a tough sell, but I'm at a stage now where I can help breathe life into this, or at least push it forward a little, and so that was a big win for us to be able to get a film like Infinity made. Yeah.
This one as well. Let's take any questions from the audience. If anyone has one, just shoot a hand straight up, and we'll come to you.
Good evening.
Hey, man.
First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here, because I didn't expect that I will be here today. I just came to fix my iPhone, actually, and see an announcement. And I'm also a film critic from Kazakhstan, and it's a double pleasure to be here.
Man, I've been to Kazakhstan.
Yeah. And my question is about awards to The Lion. As I know, there was several screenings at film festivals, and as I know, this film got 3 or 4 prizes at film festivals, and all of them people choice or audience choice. In your opinion, why this movie is so attractive for audience? Thank you.
Man, I just think it's the right message to be putting out into the world right now. I think people. I look at movies, and when I want to sit in this dark room, I want to project it into an escapist world and see stories of human triumph. That's what I want to see. And that's what this is at its core. It's about love, it's about triumph, and it's about perseverance. And it's completely true. So when you watch it, there's that other layer that, oh my God, this guy actually did this. So, yeah.
In the sense that once you have love in that way, it never goes away. It's always sort of imprinted on you.
Yeah, really. And it lots of people that have seen it in the Q&As are like, I want to call my mom or my dad afterwards, or my sister, and tell them I love them. And that's the reason we put art out into the world, So yeah, it makes it worthwhile.
Next question.
Is it harder to bring to life fictional characters or characters based on real people?
They both pose their difficulties. Real people is hard because, it depends. We didn't really go for a mimicry in this movie. I don't look like the guy, but to capture his essence is really important. So that's what directors look for. You can go in and do a lot of makeup and make it work sometimes, but for me, I think to find the truth in it is really, really important. And sometimes when you're not basing it on a real person, it's even harder because the possibilities are endless. There's too much to filter through, and that can get you lost in this ratatouille of too many ingredients. So sometimes when okay, this is what this guy's traits are, this, and this, you can build off that, that structure. But when there's something on a page, there's so many things you can add in, so many ingredients. So I don't know, really. I approach them very similarly, though. And, you start with a script, and then you can fill it out with other stuff. Maybe you're playing a chef, and he says his favorite cuisine is this, and you're like, okay, let me go on the internet and look at that area in the world, see what it's like, can build a bit of history there. And with Saru, it's like, okay, this is what he's like on page. Now I can go and research him, but there's just more tools, there's more stuff out there. But yeah, I don't really know actually. They both have their own challenges.
I've heard some actors say that if the person that they're playing is still alive, they sometimes don't even want to meet them until after filming is done.
Yeah.
Because they want to sort of have the room to inform their performance.
Yeah, I don't want to be a photocopy machine. You know, like that's not what I want to do. Yeah. You know, otherwise it's like completely soul destroying for me to go in. You feel like you're a previs, you know, and I've done a big studio film that really stunk, and I felt like that. You know, I didn't have no space to breathe. So that's why you go for smaller projects where you can really try and bring some truth to it. But that's really what it's about. Yeah.
So next question.
Hey, how you doing?
First of all, I just want to say, as a brown actor, you're an inspiration.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much. But my question is, was there, or did you have any life experiences that helped you out for this movie specifically?
This role? Yeah, I mean, if I didn't have any life experiences, the whole 8 months was creating those experiences, you know, going on the trains, doing all that work, create real history for the role. But like I said, I grew up suppressing a part of myself, and so did the character. And it's now he goes back to this country, even though he looks like everyone, he's just alien to that world. So I could relate to that, you know, I could relate to that. Yeah.
Hi, I just like to know, because I've been to India,
Yeah.
okay? But I'm not going to go there. But you filmed Slumdog Millionaire, so that was in India, and then this one. So with these two films, there are two different types of film. What was your rapport with India each time? Did you have like different experiences with the people and the dialects going through the different regions?
Yeah, I've shot 5 films there now. But
excuse me.
That's all right. Yeah, always. I love it. You know, like I go there, and it's just bursting with humanity. There's so many people, and as a canvas to shoot on, you can put a camera anywhere, and magic unfolds like in front of you. And it's one of those places that you cannot go in too prepared, because it will swallow you up. So you have to, as an actor, learn to be a bit more bendy. You got to adapt, basically, because you go in and the heat's thing, then all of a sudden there's a troop of monkeys that have come from the roof, and they're sitting there, a stray dog walks past, you know, everyone's looking down the camera lens, so you got to adapt, and all of a sudden you're moving there and you're setting it up completely differently, you know, and you're fighting against the elements of the city. So there's always 3 characters in a scene when you're working in Bombay. There's you, your co-star, and the city, you know, so it makes you kind of, you know, be a looser actor. You look at these Bollywood guys that do it, and you can laugh at it, and I used to, but they do like 20 films a year, and they come, like in Slumdog, some of the actors will come to set with other makeup on from other movies, and then when the director calls cut, they're like, and in action, they're like, do an amazing take, and they go to bed. You know, it's like completely amazing, but they're just so loose in the space. And the chaos that affects you as an actor, you're like, oh, people are making too much noise. That guy, she's, you know, doing this with the makeup, moving my shirt, it's getting on my nerves. You can't get in your head about it in India. You've just got to be chill.
For the record, in addition to Slumdog and The Man Who Knew Infinity and this film, the other films that you shot there are The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, right? And the sequel, Second Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. And next question.
Hey, so have you ever thought of writing or directing your own movie or stories?
Yeah, I'm working on something now. I have one thing in development at the British Film Institute, and another film, which is kind of like a modern day superhero story set in Bombay, but on old Indian mythology. You know, I think they need a story like that there. You know, so that's what I'm working on.
Hi.
Hello.
I was wondering what your favorite experience was that you've picked up from working with any actor.
Oh man, there's so many. Ooh. Okay, Jeremy Irons was incredible because he's an absolute technician of the art form. Like you sit in a scene with him, and you know you're worried about your dialogue, you're worried about your accent, you're worried about your makeup, you're worried about everything. He'll come in and he's like, "Look, what season are we in? Okay, it's that. Okay, let's frost up the windows. Let's get the fire on there. Get costume in here to throw some jackets over there." He's so aware of filmmaking as an art form. You know, we're dealing in moving pictures, and that really, you know, was incredible to see. He taught me about business as well. Sometimes you go in and there's nothing to do, and you're sitting there and it's two men talking at each other's faces, and it doesn't add for an interesting scene. So there's a scene at the end of the movie where I'm saying goodbye to him, and I'm going to board a boat back to India. And, you know, the director, he's a great director, but that day he was just like, you know, all right, so you stand there on your mark, he stands there, you do your lines, hug each other and bounce. And Jeremy's like, no, you know, remember you're late. You know, you got to move your luggage, do this, do that. And he's like, you don't need to deliver them so cleanly, like throw it away. You know, you can be grabbing a bag, doing this. It's about being less precious. The really good ones, the Dame Maggie Smith, who I worked with again in Marigold, they have a lucidity. They're not so precious about everything. That makes them so good.
This kind of riffs off that question, but I always like to ask, is there a bit of advice either about acting or about life that you've received that you really love, that you really hold precious? I like the idea of acting, that kind of keeping it loose, that lucidity kind of.
Yeah, I mean, the best, like in Marigold, what I learned from all those great old actors is to remain curious. You know, they're all so curious, always asking questions. And that's, you know, the best advice I've ever been given.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Lion opens on November 25th. Dev Patel, thanks very
guys.
much.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.